What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Justin Davis. Today we're going to review the iFlight Evoque. This is the F5X. This is the X version. There's also an F5D, which is a dead cat version. This one is the true X freestyle version, and I would say this is pretty much going to be the god of freestyle quads for 2021. Well, if you've looked on the internet recently, the Evoque is actually Land Rover. Land Rover Evoque is one of the compact Land Rover SUVs right now, and I would say like this is probably the Land Rover of iFlight's entire bind and fly line right now, because it has all the bells and whistles on here. It has unbranded motors, which is pretty interesting. They are the new Zing Pro motors, and there's no source or information on the KV available. There are a 4S version and 6S versions available. There is an HD and an analog version available for both the X and the D models. So we could jump right into this review, and we're going to do some night flying with this, and we're going to do a little bit of daytime flying, some mild freestyle, mild to wild. We're also going to talk about some pros and cons on this review. As always, I'm going to tell you my first pro about this would be that it's built like a beast. I mean, there are sidewalls, there is a recessed XT60 mount in the back here, so you can't pull that off. You can have a battery eject, of course, but it also has sidewalls with two options on the side right here for plugging in the USB-C ports, which I love. That's super cool. And it even has a little spot right here to get your sort of driver into, or your bamboo skewer to bind it up with your DJI remote or your DJI goggles. I have a TBS Crossfire Nano on the back of mine we're going to be flying today, and I have a Caddx Vista with a Polar up front. So the Polar, if you don't know about it yet, it's the Starlight camera from Caddx that allows you to fly day or night, which is kind of fun. I flew this pretty late in the evening the other day with some guys for this review, and we did some follow with some LEDs. It was super fun, and when I took my goggles off, it's one of those evenings where you take your goggles off and it's so shocking how dark it is outside. Really cool that this camera is drastically different than the original air module camera and the Nebula series. So very, very cool Starlight camera here. So you have to check one of these out. They're coming on most of the new bind and flies recently. So by the last 2 or 3 HD quads I've had the Polar on there, and I love it. So I can't wait for Pacific Northwest winter on those overcast days. It's just gonna look great most of the winter, so I'm looking forward to that. We'll talk about some of the pros and cons in this video. Also, the first con that I would say about this is, see where the battery's sitting? It's sitting kind of in the back right there. And the reason that is because we have this recessed XT60 port in the very back right here, but look at the angle that it's at. It's at an angle back this way toward the antenna. So that has to have the XT60 plug in at an angle right about like this. So even this far back, I even have to kind of scooch it back a little further. If you're not running the GoPro, that puts the battery off center, which is kind of awkward. The good news is that it didn't really affect the flight performance that much. It just kind of looks weird without the GoPro on the front. If you have the GoPro on the front, no biggie, you've got balanced CG here, but otherwise you got some wonky CG going on here, and thankfully I didn't have any problems with it flipping out or having flight controller freak out, what we call tumble, and I figured as such with this power system. So we also have an F7 flight controller in here. It's a 20x20 stack right in the dead center of this quad. It is a twin G as well, so it is rocking some twin F7 chips on there, and we also have 55 amp ESCs. But the other thing I wanted to tell you about this before I forget is that this is, you know, would be better if it was straight up. This battery mount back here, it should have been straight up. Engineering wise, it looks cool, but function wise for you guys, it makes it harder to plug the battery in. So that's one of my biggest gripes about this quad. But my other gripe is that the Vista is actually underneath a carbon plate, and now we have sidewalls on here. So what does that do? That creates a problem when you're trying to do a DJI update. You have a Vista, even at 25 milliwatt, I was overheating. It's inside, it's cased inside these sidewalls, and these sidewalls are great. They light up with LEDs, but they keep the Vista inside a cage. So that's one thing that's not great. But you can see the LEDs are super cool looking, and on the bottom with the iFlight logo, and on the arms as well. I've got my QC pass code sticker on the bottom there. I'm just going to pull that off and flip it around that way. It's the iFlight logo, super cool. And these show up really well at night, so if you have a friend that has LEDs on their quad, this is the ticket for being able to find each other in the field, and even on a darker day you can do some really cool chase stuff. So without further ado, guys, let's strap on a battery and let's go outside and let's fly the F5X version, and we'll do a little flying. We'll get back inside and we'll check it out on the bench. Thanks for hanging on me. Here we go. Alright guys, we're going to test out the polar cam on the Evoque, and we're going to A and B it with the original DJI Air Module camera. It is Chris and John flying tonight with me, and they decided to just do a little chase with me and show you guys the big difference between the new polar cam and the original DJI cam. So you can see the Evoque there on the bottom right. We're just going to go up and do a little dive first, and then we're going to go underneath the tree canopy and show you the big difference between both these cameras. But isn't that cool? Those guys have LEDs on theirs, and they were already doing some chase video for each other, so that's worked out really cool. I want to also say a shout out to Alex too for getting me this footage from those guys. It's always a lot of fun to fly with you guys. And now we're going to go underneath the canopy, and I want to show you the big difference here. We're looking at the full screen Evoque right here, and I whacked the tree branch right there, found some scraggle. Was able to recover. Luckily, this quad is fast. It's kind of responsive on the sticks, but look how well I can see under here. And it's interesting the way the street lights look. Now you're looking at the bottom right DJI cam. See how much darker it is? And here I make a right turn. I'm going to fly along this fence line, and this fence line is notoriously thick with some trees through here, and there's some scraggle. It's also a lot darker over here. Look how dark the DJI cam is. The original DJI cam is just so much darker. And right here, my man, unfortunately, found a tree. And that's what happens when it's hard to see where you're going. So I gotta say that polar cam is gonna be killer this winter when, like, you know, it's nice and overcast. Those overcast days are gonna be a lot brighter. It's gonna feel more like a sunny day. And this is one of those weird things where, like, you're flying and you take your goggles off and you're like, whoa, it's really kind of dark out right now. So that was kind of cool not to realize like quite how dark it was getting. So you can see the moon up there. Wow, really cool. And you know, just for funsies, we're going to go for a little power loop there. Came up a little bit short right there. I think one of the guys just hit a tree with their quad. We're going to go and try that power loop again. One more power loop, coming back down a little bit late on the throttle. Just barely scooting through there. Almost hit a little bit of low scraggle there. Luckily for me, I was able to scoot through and have a good time. But man, this polar cam is where it's at. I love that this is what's coming on a lot of new bind and fly quads lately. And I didn't realize how great this camera is. So now we're flying today, and it's overcast, and what a perfect day to test out the polar cam again. So I'm just going to take it up here in a minute and show you what the sky looks like, but everything down bottom, that's what I love about DJI. If you can get the DJI version, get it. You can really change the way you fly, and you can really see where you're going. You can see the scraggle, the branches in front of you, and really get some tight end shots. Like really get in there a little tighter than you normally would with analog. Sometimes with analog, you just can't quite see the branches sticking out. And this was fun just to do some nice, smooth, slow flow style flying. Just kind of have fun getting in there, finding some new lines in this new spot I've never flown before, and really, really smooth flying quad. And I think if you want to, I would go for the 6S version of this quad, because I feel like you can get a little more power at the high end of the throttle when you need to kind of get out of a situation. 4S and 6S, quite a big difference in the power to weight ratio. So a little lower KV motors, but some pretty high throttle
situations. If you need that extra power, it's there when you need it. So I had a good time flying this quad, and it's not a quad that I'm worried about too much. If I went down through these trees, I feel like it can take some hits in the trees and keep on going. This quad, for the beginners, having all of those wires kind of sealed up on the side is nice. For the really hot days, you want to turn down your VTX to like 200 milliwatt. But otherwise, this thing is a total beast.
Welcome back from the flight test, guys. Let's go ahead and check it out on the scale. With that 1550 battery, I'm getting 607 on the scale for grams, and if you add a GoPro to that, it's gonna be closer to like 700. It is not a super lightweight quad. However, we do have 6mm arms on this quad and sidewalls. The sidewalls are pretty thin, but they are fairly lightweight. I don't think they add a lot of weight to the quad, but the overall quad it's built to be a beast, freestyle beast. So that's one thing there. Let's go ahead and take a little closer look at the quad body itself. Aside from being one of the heavier bind and flies out there, I think that the body itself is pretty cool. It is a 3K carbon fiber and 6mm arms. You've got a TPU mount here for a GoPro holder that can come along with it, hopefully come along with it. I'll also put a link down below for these as well that are compatible with this mount. The mount does come with it. Mine was on the quad when I got it. Now, one cool thing about it is that when I opened up the box, I looked at the GoPro mount itself, and check this out. This is kind of cool that the bolts on top of this are not just your standard M3 bolts. They're actually panned out quite a bit here to give it like a little washer effect on top of the bolt. I don't know if you guys can see that here, but it is pretty cool that they did do that. I wish these companies had been producing these years ago, because these are actually pretty useful. A lot of times when you have a TPU type of camera mount or something else, TPU somewhere else, like on the bottom of these motor bumpers, a lot of times these kind of pull through or they push through and they break the TPU mount, whichever TPU mount it is. And a lot of times on these bumpers as well. This front bumper is nice here, but this is nice that they include these pan head washers, and they're not the pan head bolts. They're not on this one, but they do have a little extra rim on here, as you can see right there, which is cool. That'll keep it from pulling through and give it a little more strength if you really do take a frontal crash. In the front here too, we have 2 extra pieces of this sidewall sticking out, which is cool because it gives your polar some protection. And there's 3 adjustment points here on the side. If you look to the side right here, there's actually you can move it forwards and backwards. So when mine came in, my camera was just sticking out just a little bit. So what I did was I just moved it back a little bit and gave it a little more frontal protection. Now in the back here is where the Vista sits, and that is where the USB port is here. And we have that little button right there that's has its own little port through the sidewall. And right here, USB-C port to going to the F7 flight controller. And it's nice, there's a little detail here that says Nazgul on the frame. And you can see the LED lights go all the way front to back here. And I love what it looks like when it's plugged in. I mean, it looks super cool. And these are, I believe these are LEDs. They're not fiber optic like I was originally thinking, but just such a cool looking quad once it's all lit up. And it's so cool that you can just take this out and you can fly it with your friends, already set up with the LEDs. And the greatest thing about the LEDs on a quad is that if your buddy adds LEDs on his, then you guys can chase each other and find each other in the field a lot quicker. So early in the morning flights and like sometime like closer to evening, you can have a lot of fun with LEDs. So it looks like Star Wars just racing through the woods, like the Ewok village. That was really cool, that footage that we got. But 2207 motors on here, and there does appear to be 2 types of 4S and 6S motor configurations. And again, they're not telling us the KVs on those just yet, but if you look on the Banggood website, you can click on 4S or 6S. So you can select whichever one you want. And then after that, you can select your receiver. Looks like it comes in bind and fly DJI version. So this flight controller on here, this F7 is an HD flight controller and will be able to be bound up with a DJI controller. That's pretty sweet. So that will work out of the box. And some of them don't actually. So it's a good thing that this one is an HD flight controller on here. 55 amp ESCs. This is a Sussex Mini X ESCs. And we also have, let's find out what this top plate is real quick for you. Top plate, 3mm top plate, and the bottom plate is 3mm also. There is a 2-part sandwich on the very bottom right here, and 3mm top plate. And one other thing was that I did have to take the top plate off to get it to update for the DJI Cadex Vista in the back. It seemed to be overheating, and so I had to pull this top plate off. It is 8 bolts to pull off the top plate, but the good news is that there's not a lot of extras in here to make it difficult to access the flight controller. And I'll try to show you an image of that right now that I took with my phone when I first got it. The first day that I had this, I just went ahead and shot some video for you guys. And this is what the flight controller looks like from the top. That's where the flight controller is sitting, and the Vista in the back right there needs plenty of ventilation. And then further in the back right here, we have the XT60 mount, which I think looks pretty cool. I wish it was on a vertical angle going straight up, because that would make the battery plug-in a little easier and we could slide it back and forth more. And the way they have it here with it pointing out this direction along with the antenna, it's kind of, you know, nice and symmetrical with the antenna, but the problem is that the cable off the battery has come way around and reached to here. So maybe one thing on a future update, but it looks like this is all part of, well, actually that's the side plate comes up there, and then this is a TPU part here. So this is separate. There's another piece of like plastic that covers the top of it. So it's all really robust looking. The whole thing looks like just a total beginner freestyle beast. I think that this one's going to be nice for guys that get their first quad that need something that's going to be like ultra durable. It looks like it will take a huge beating. It will be able to probably hit a tree and survive. I mean, 6mm arms is not playing around. And we have the TPU mount that comes off the back here with just underneath this bottom plate right here is my TBS Nano. And you can reach that gold button there with a bamboo skewer. You also have a full-size beeper on here, which I thought was really great. It is extremely loud, so you can see it right there. If you lose this in the field, you'll be able to hear this beeper from, you know, half a football field to a football field away once you flip into your beeper. And along the bottom again, here we have those LEDs that are recessed just barely into the arms. They're not cut very deep, so it doesn't compromise the strength of the arms, which is great. And this was just a nice detail on the bottom, the iFlight logo. And one other thing, I mean, you know, I've been flying a lot of these long-range quads recently, and I'm thinking like, oh man, I wish the antenna on this one was maybe just a little taller. If I could be like a little bit critical, because at certain points your battery might be blocking the antenna here. But when you're running, you know, DJI at 700 milliwatt, it's not a big deal. Most of the time with DJI, you're going to be able to see where you're going. It's much more reliable to me than analog is. So I think it's a pretty cool release. Again, like this one costs $450. We also do have the Nazgul props on here. These are the 5-inch props. The analog version of this quad, I believe that one comes with a 600 milliwatt transmitter. I'll just double check on that for you guys real quick. 600 milliwatt, yep, I was right. So with smart audio already set up, which is kind of cool, but it's nice that they came out with 2 versions of this. I didn't realize that at first that they did have 2 different versions. So the analog version, double checking on the camera that comes with that one. That one's not going to be a Starlight camera, I don't think, so it won't have the night flying capability. So Racecam R1 Mini 1200 TVL camera, I don't believe the Race Cam R1 will do nighttime. And I also have an update for you. We found the KV on the motors. They're listed on the analog version on Banggood's website. If you go look, it says that these are the Zing E Pros, and this is like the V2 Pros. 4S is 2750 kV, and the 6S version, which I have here, is 1800 kV. So 2750 for the 4S version and 1800 kV for the 6S version. That is pretty cool. So I'm very happy about that. You can check out the links down below, guys, if you enjoyed this review. As always, pick one up, and it benefits me and my family. I appreciate that. And don't forget to jump in and grab that FEMI if you want to get entered in for our contest. All you have to do is subscribe, make a comment, let me know where you're from, and send us an email on our dronecamps.com website, and you'll be entered for this month's drawing. So that drawing is coming up around the middle of September. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. This one was a total beast, and so much versatility as far as the strength, the tune, the overall package here, the optional GoPro, the Starlight camera, day or night, you can fly this quad. Yeah, and analog and HD options. So, and the dead cat version, or just the True X Freestyle version, whichever way you want to go. So some sort of medium range flying, some cinema, or some wicked hardcore freestyle. This is going to be a fun quad for 2021. I think this probably should end up being one of the best-selling quads this year. So I'll put all the different links down below, starting at $299 all the way up to the King at $450 with DJI on here. 6S, that's the one I'd recommend. Get the 6S version, you'll be super happy. But guys, take care, stay humble, be kind out there, and please do subscribe to my channel. I will see you on the next one.